Hello dear students and welcome to another module of educational technology. Today I am going to talk about classroom communication. For introduction of today's topic, classroom is a place intentionally created with the purpose of producing learning through meaningful contact or interaction among students, teachers and the content to be taught. Here, teachers, students and contents are the three major components of any classroom. In order to make learning occur in a true sense, a student needs positive classroom environment consisting of cooperation, collaboration, joyfulness and fruitful communication. Classroom environment in 21st century learning incorporates 4 C's including collaboration, creativity, critical thinking and communication. It is quite clear that communication has a vital role in learning and teaching. Teaching is considered to be communication and therefore good teachers are always supposed to be good communicators. According to Edgar Dale, communication is the sharing of ideas and feelings in the mood of mutuality. Classroom learning, teachers' effectiveness, students' understanding and their learning outcomes are mainly dependent upon the quality of communication taking place in the classroom. As communication is of great importance in classroom, it is necessarily required to understand what classroom communication stands for and what factors are responsible for affecting it. Let's see what classroom communication means. Etymologically, communication came from a Latin root word communis, meaning common. Hence, it stands for an act of sharing commonness or common understanding and experiences with others. Communication is a two-way process which involves interaction between two or more persons. Communication is taken as a complex two-way and intentional process of passing the message from one end to the other using a channel. This communication is actually life of a classroom, without which existence of learning is not at all possible. Education with its corresponding activities and procedures of teaching and learning involves communication between teachers and students as channels for realizing the instructional objectives. Communication in the classroom is to a considerable extent carried on through language spoken and written, with the former playing a relatively greater role. It is well known that an individual learns more readily from oral interchange of ideas than from reading the printed pages. Language is the primary means of communication between teacher and student. Communication always carries a purpose which is encoded in the message and transmitted to its receiver, where it is decoded and feedback is given. Components of communication are senders or encoders, receivers or decoders, messages that are signals, media or channel and feedback. In the context of classroom, senders who initiate the message are teachers and receivers are students who interpret or decode the message. Adding to it, message is content being taught in the classroom and channel might be any medium, tool or technique being used by teacher followed by feedback both from teachers as well as students. It is a cyclic process where its completion depends upon the student's understanding of the message or content in the form of their response as feedback. In a classroom, the meaning of communication is related to the messages and counter messages which constitute the teaching learning process, which involves initiation, reception and response that serve as feedback. Kramer mentioned that no cycle of communication is complete until the speaker is assured that the idea he or she has expressed has actually been received by the listener. Classroom communication is not mere one-sided presentation of facts, but it requires intercommunication between students and teacher along with its occurrence among students. There must be reaction and interaction with constant reciprocal feedback, which decides the level of realization of the purpose of communication. Teaching and learning in classroom is a communicative process. In the words of Howell and Howell, communication is such an encompassing process that it filters through all human activities. No living person is unaffected by communication. Learning at heart is the expression of communication. I.H. Anderson says that communication is the most effective tool for human survival. It works as a bridge of meaning between people. In classrooms, message is designed for the entire class consisting of a group of students from diverse backgrounds. The message may be conveyed through facial expressions, gestures, spoken and written symbols, body language, and other forms of expression. Every medium has its own influence on messages to be sent. So, it should be used by the teachers in an effective and meaningful manner. A teacher should be a good planner of communication in the classroom. Now, we will see what verbal and non-verbal communication means. A classroom with teachers and students' interaction is considered to be an effective classroom. It involves interaction or sharing of ideas or feelings among students and teachers with the purpose of learning. Whenever communication occurs, it is done in two forms, verbal and non-verbal. Verbal communication stands for the form of communication in which messages are delivered verbally, either in spoken form or written form. It is further divided into oral and written communication. Oral communication is very effective in classroom, and majority of classroom time for verbal presentation is devoted to this form of communication. It becomes easy to reach the student's mind and quick responses are possible through it. Written communication is influenced by writing style, vocabulary, grammar, and clarity of the language used. There are chances of editing and revision in this form of communication. It can be kept as record for future references. In classroom, generally, teachers use both oral and written forms together for better results. Non-verbal communication is considered as receiving and sending of wordless messages without using any verbal means. It is always effective if incorporated with verbal forms of communication, as it adds valuable information to the verbal messages. This form includes gestures, language of the eyes, body language, postures, tone of voice, facial expressions, etc. It can be used alone or along with verbal communication. These elements are more accurate in transmitting message. For example, if in a class, students are listening to a teacher who is continuously sitting on his or her chair and gives a lecture without moving heads or hands, it is not going to make any influence on learning of the content being taught. In other situation, if the same teacher stands and moves in classroom while giving lecture, through various facial expressions and body movements, it will be more effective for learners. According to Peter F. Drucker, the most important thing in communication is hearing what is not said. It is evident through studies also that non-verbal communication is more effective in teaching and learning, and it gives strength and extra effects to the verbal communication. In non-verbal communication, communicators' appearance, body language and sound matters a lot in making a student more focused and motivated for learning. Let's see what are the factors which affect classroom communication. Communication is done with the purpose of exposition, persuasion, and facilitation. Teachers communicate with students communicate with their peers and with the teacher. How teachers and students communicate with each other affects instruction and the whole teaching learning process. Classroom communication and classroom instructions are closely linked to one another. Classroom communication is dynamic, affected by culture and ethics, competency-based, and is being transferred by media and technology. The effectiveness of classroom communication depends upon the successful transmission of message from source to the receivers. As communication has elements such as source, receiver, message, channel, and feedback, factors which affect classroom communication are also associated with them. The factors affecting classroom communication are given in the following manner. Communication's effectiveness depends upon the strengths and the qualities of the source. Taking teachers as source or senders of message, communication is affected by their abilities to communicate effectively. The abilities such as content knowledge, self-confidence, behavior, personality, empathy, optimism, thinking ability, expression skills, communication skills, social sensitivity, beliefs, values, media utilization skills, attitude towards students, text, and self-attitude, etc. are important factors that affect classroom communication to the larger extent. Second, considering the content of teaching and learning as message or symbol of communication in classroom, its features affects its quality. On the one hand, for verbal messages, factors are accuracy, precision, simplicity, clarity, appropriateness, imagination, and originality, along with its value for learners. On the other hand, non-verbal messages, delivery speed, proxemics, posture, gesture, body language, facial expression, and emotions, etc. Third, factors related to receivers or students are their previous knowledge, communication skills, age, sex, intelligence, self-esteem, motivation, readiness, needs, attitude, attentiveness, curiosity, emotional state, beliefs, values, interest, and aptitude, which keep on affecting classroom communication. Next, factors associated to communication channel or media are its type and quality. Message will not reach to the destination effectively if proper media is not selected and used in the process. This channel works as a bridge between source and the receiver. Classroom environment also affects the communication. The communication is more effective if the environment is open, supportive, positive, devoid of noise and other distractions. Environmental and physical comfort, including seating arrangement, audibility and visibility, and minimum oral and visual distractions, etc. On the basis of these discussions, it can be concluded that classroom is a small communication world. Teaching and learning in the classroom occurs through communication between teachers and students through both verbal and non-verbal forms. The meaning is created through their interaction in communication-rich environment. The effectiveness tends to increase with appropriate and judicious usage of verbal and non-verbal means in teaching-learning process. This communication is affected by several factors such as teachers' and students' abilities and personality traits, quality of message, selection and use of media, and classroom environment. At the end, it can be added that a teacher should use communication and its forms effectively in the classroom for more productive and meaningful learning. Thank you and enjoy learning.